how are you?
How you doing?
How you doing? How are you?
No, I think this is right.
It's like it's crazy. I'm wearing it a little more now because my 80-year-old father is coming in for Thanksgiving. That's the way I look at it. I mean, we have Liv too, and she's going to school, so.
See, that's for 43.
See
We
my
actually have
89-year-old dad every night, and yesterday we went out to lunch with rivals, so.
You gotta live too.
And it was amazing that there was, we were like almost the only people. Wow. And that's what it's like.
Yeah.
It was no noise, nobody bothering.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I felt bad for them.
Right. It's an odd time, to say the least. Good to see you.
I think that one actually, this one here. The lower wrong. And
Somebody else may.
they will, and
Yes.
I'll correct it while I'm doing it. Because I
Is that
think
a-
what happened was, let me take that.
Is that
No, I just, because you have it.
correct? But we did this year. Yep.
I think that was a observation of the EIT report.
Yes.
Yep, this one is correct. This is updated from, an updated number from Tuesday, so. Yes.
That was my phone.
That's.
I have a call map that does that at 10 a.m.
It was a singing pool. Did you see me?
Yep, I did. You perked right up.
Oh, look, here was a singing pool.
At least they weren't praying when it did it.
Yeah. Trying not to steal things. I brought down copies of the, this is the application has to be signed too, in addition to the easement. So.
My question is,
It has
good morning,
that-
Commissioner McDonald, coming back.
Okay.
I just
How are
got
you, sir?
Okay.
Good to see you.
So here's, I just printed.
So I guess
all
the
these
meeting in
on.
Union County has
If
been
we need to
changed,
or
and
not,
it's gonna
but-
be Zoom.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's good.
That
It's
is-
crazy to get together.
That is good. We're live, by the way.
Morning. Thank you.
Morning.
I'm here. It feels like a Monday.
Oh, shoot, I must have left the agenda up there. Let's see.
You need one?
Yeah, if you could, thank you. I took the stuff, I just wanted to. Thank you.
Right here, Matt?
I know it.
Did you need me to sign it?
But there's only one.
Okay.
Just so you know, when I come up with nonprofits, I'm gonna change that number to reflect that number.
Did we get an answer on that other 5 million that he was asking about? Bill asked the other day about the other 5.
The 1,200,000, that number?
Yep.
Center.
Yep. That's, yeah, because.
Oh.
Reading the-
Should we ask, did we ask that?
Okay.
Got that information, like Tuesday.
Okay.
He said it was a line item.
He did say it, why not?
It's all good.
He's not here.
If you could show us
She
what
knows,
she's
I know.
exactly talking about,
Yeah, maybe she knows just the top.
Thank you.
I'll get the details.
Okay. I have a question. The KOD, KOEZ, did you file that with the state? Okay. Because nobody knows who files that. Maya didn't know. Yeah. So, okay, I'm gonna reach out to Betsy because she had sent a reminder out about it. So I'm just gonna reach out to her and try and find out who previously did it. So.
I've never been involved in an actual filing of those.
Okay.
Periphery,
Yeah.
but never the actual.
Hey, Matt,
Okay.
what about this
All right,
one?
so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reach out to Betsy and be like, hey, yeah.
I have that in here for you guys to sign.
This?
Yeah. Are you signing it now?
That's part of the, meeting
I don't
today.
know, since it's.
That's part of the meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
counties, but maybe that
Yeah.
is, that could have been
Okay,
something
that's
that
part of,
says
yep, that's part of the
I don't
meeting
know.
today.
It just seemed to be
Thanks.
on his radar.
Right.
He may have done it, he's allowed to do it.
Right, okay, well, that's a good idea, I'll reach out to him too. And, I'm sending in I got, you sent the stuff for the pipe grant to me with all the numbers and everything, so I'm gonna submit that
Hello, sir.
tomorrow.
How you doing?
And then you'll see $100
Good.
reimbursement.
Yeah.
I'll submit $100, review check.
Prior year, you have a mask.
I called DCD. I'm
Yeah,
like,
thank you, yeah, I do, I call it the word
We want cash, right?
No.
Your wife makes sure of that,
When
right?
you hit send,
Your wife
you
makes
have to
sure of
make
that, right?
payment. You
I
can't
always
just
walk
submit
out,
it
I
until
get
you
downstairs,
have
I'm ready to go out, I'm like, oh, I forgot my mask, and then she'll go.
I think you're good.
Outside,
I think
wearing
you're
it
good.
I think
I don't
so.
tell her birthday every day. She says,
I'm
I never
not
jump
gonna
in
sign
the
the check.
with my suit on. I feel clothes, so that works, you know, I said,
Well, some of the doctors have told me that they should leave their clothes in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
Let them sit there for 3 days.
Good morning. I ask you to please stand for the opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for another day that you've created. We ask for your blessings on our meeting today. Guide us as we are stewards of the county. May our decisions please you and be full of your wisdom. We are nothing without you, God. Everything comes through your grace and mercy. Lord, as we remember and celebrate our veterans this week, we celebrate the 245th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. The Marine Corps has served in nearly every conflict in United States history. For the brave men and women, we thank you for their lives. We ask you to continue to protect all our servicemen and women as they protect our freedoms. We pray these requests in your name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll convene the Commissioner's public meeting at this time. Commissioner Massar is still a little bit under the weather, so he will not be with us. We ask for approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so carried. Public comment on agenda items only at this time. Good morning.
Good morning, Jack McKernan, Williamsport. Just since I didn't get to the meeting on Tuesday, I just wanted to see if you had any insight on the law clerk upgrades. Why the increase and why now? Why not just wait until January 1st? Also on the soil conservation, is the part-time position, I'm assuming Mark Davidson, I think I saw that he...
Yeah, he retired.
Yeah, and is that part-time position for him to finish up stuff?
Yeah, it's for him to finish up stuff for 75 hours and to guide the new person in. We met with the law clerks, or with the judges, Judge Butts and Judge Linhart, and I'll let Commissioner Marabito. I met with him privately because I wasn't available, I was on vacation, but Commissioner Marabito can go into what he had a conversation with, how this started out was Judge Linhart contacted us about the law clerks, about reevaluating and their positions. They're having a hard time keeping law clerks, attracting law clerks due to the salaries. So we took a look at it. So we eliminated position 8. We based it on their law, being a law clerk, then getting a law license, and then finally the years of experience. So.
Do I need to take the mask down, Eileen? Or no?
If you can.
Okay.
I get.
Because it doesn't go through properly. So welcome, Commissioner McKernan. It's good to see you. So the situation with the law clerks, just so the public understands, after law school, their second year of law school, students can apply to clerk for a judge. And I did that, which is how I wound up in Williamsport. And typically, you put in your application. Now, depending on the court you're applying with, if you don't need the bar exam for that particular state, you're going to get more applicants. If you have a system that says you have to have Pennsylvania, take the Pennsylvania bar, then you're probably only going to get applicants who are intending to return to Pennsylvania. Now, under the previous situation, you actually didn't have to pass the bar, but the wages were lower. So part of the goal here was to broaden the pool of people that judges can get to apply to be a law clerk for them by not having a requirement that it be a Pennsylvania bar, but that it be open to any bar, with the goal and hopefully that we can attract people who may actually think they wanted to go to practice in New York and took the New York bar, but when they come here and they experience a different lifestyle than they might be experiencing in New York, they decide, you know what, I'm going to take the Pennsylvania bar if they decide to go into private practice, or I'm going to work as a law clerk. So that was part of the motivation behind it, is to try to broaden it. I think that although we are not going to single-handedly kickstart all the employment, I think that the extent to which the county as an employer and a large employer can do things that attract people from outside the area, it helps our area grow, both in terms of obviously population, but it helps us grow in terms of recruiting people and diversity and so forth. And when I say diversity, part of that I mean people from different parts of the country who say, you know what, I'm not going to go back to New York or to Massachusetts or wherever. I'll never forget when I was in law school, I was on the International Law Review, and there was a young man there who was he was probably about 6 or 7 years younger than me. And this was in the 80s, he said he was from Scranton. And I said, oh, are you going to go back there to practice law? And he said, oh, I'll never go back there. And that has always stuck in my mind as one of the big challenges we face in rural communities. Obviously, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre is not as rural as others. But what I mean is that this part of the state where we have such a hard time getting people to come and live. So part of it was an effort to try to create a situation where we've had more applicants. It did increase what we pay. And the feeling was that the level that we were setting for law clerks was not going to help us be able to attract law clerks. I think that's a fair assessment of what happened.
Yeah.
And in particular, we had some new judges. We have some new judges who are trying to recruit people and so forth. And so we did do it now as opposed to January. The amount of extra cost between now and January was somewhat low. I mean, it wasn't a huge amount of money. It was a couple of months.
And with the law clerks, they bring us a different level of expertise, whereas someone who works as a regular attorney in the public defender's office or the DA's office, they're going to be more of a trial attorney, whereas the law clerk is not a trial attorney. They bring in a different level of expertise that the judge looks for, that assists them on research. They're there for research, And it's very important to have the research because it helps in their opinions and overall their decisions. So it's very important. We worked closely with HR. We worked closely with the courts. We went back and forth, and we felt this was a fair agreement between the courts and the commissioner's office. And it's a slight increase, but it was a compromise on both the commissioner's office and the courts. And we felt it was a good outcome and left everybody satisfied.
You know, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm trying to remember, law clerk, pay grade 8 to pay grade 9, did not have any bar requirement.
Right.
So,
Started at 38,000, Commissioner.
yeah, and then law clerk 1, I believe, and I'm looking at my colleagues here to help me recollect, I think you needed to have passed the bar, but it could be
Yes.
any bar. Whereas under the policy that existed, it had to be the Pennsylvania bar.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then what we did is we went, which is the one that has experience? Oh, maybe that was in there already.
That was
That
yeah,
was
we have
over
somebody
there.
from Washington, D.C. here who is from George Washington University, which is one of the best law schools in the nation. And, you know, the fact they didn't have their Pennsylvania bar prohibited that individual from receiving the compensation they should be able to receive.
Does that answer your question?
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the question.
And then in terms of the Conservation District, Mark Davidson is retiring. And we have, the board recommended, the Conservation District Board recommended to the commissioners someone who we're gonna take his place.
Yeah.
And the 75 hours is basically to try to have some sort of integration of what we do here.
Yeah. Okay, any other public comment this time? Okay, hearing none. We'll recess the commissioners' meeting, public meeting at this time, and salary board actions.
Director McDermott, you're going to present for HR.
Commissioners, we'll go through these separately. 2.1 in the courts. Change law clerk from pay grade 8 to pay grade 9. Change law clerk 1 from pay grade 9 to pay grade 10.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So carried.
2.2, in soil conservation, create a part-time temporary conservation district special projects position, pay grade 12.
And that would be for a maximum of 75 hours? Okay. Have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So carried.
Let me just make a quick comment.
Yeah.
Part-time positions are not participating in the pension or the health care.
Okay, we'll adjourn the salary board actions at this time. We'll reconvene the commissioners' public meeting and go to action items.
We have 3 action items. 3.1, Shannon Rossman to vote on allocation of COVID-19 county relief block grant funds. This is for nonprofits.
Okay, Shannon, welcome again.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Right before us today, we have the nonprofit allocation. If you remember, the initial allocation the Commissioners had put together with the $10.2 million COVID relief fund grants. We were initially allocating $1 million for nonprofits. However, we had over $9 million in ask for the nonprofits. This is in addition to the small business, the alternative learning centers, the municipal fire EMS, and the county's allocations. So we are recommending today that we up that to $1,216,040. We still have 1 or 2 that we are trying to get documentation on that they're a correct nonprofit, but these are the ones that we know, the 43 that are on your attached memo, we know that they have all their proper documentation for the 501c3 or 501c19. We also know that we are almost positive that we will be able to get the additional documentation we need for all of their expenses. We are just about through all of them. And I have a few meetings set up with some of them, and today is just the formal announcement of the grant award up to the amount listed on the memo, and provided they finalize all their documentation with us and then sign their subrecipient agreement. We do know that some of these nonprofits may have additional needs. We have talked about that with some of them. There are going to be some serious needs with some of our homeless, our our provision of food banks and things like that. So over the next few weeks, we are reaching out to a few of them that do those types of works to see if we do need to recommend an additional allocation.
Okay. Well, as I've stated, our small businesses are our backbone of our community. Our nonprofits are our bloodline. And, from working next door for 32 years, I worked with a lot of these nonprofits. And they do not have businesses that can donate to them right now because the businesses are hurting. They cannot do their fundraisers because that's been shut down by the state. So these nonprofits are vital in our community. They do great services. Like Humboldt County is rich with nonprofits. We need these nonprofits. We need to assist them and keep them going because they are our bloodline. So we're happy. The initial request that came in was $8.9 million from our nonprofits. And unfortunately, we only have 1.2 to be able to provide to them. We like to provide more, but we can do what we can do, and this is a start. So hopefully we'll keep them going so that they can provide the services that are so desperately needed in our county.
And when the committee reviewed these, we did give a higher recommendation to those that are providing necessary services, such as the libraries, the homeless, help with rent assistance, help with food assistance, help with just things that are going on that are so absolutely necessary.
And give you an example, on Tuesday, it was shared with us, the American Rescue Workers Warm Relief provides 750 meals per month.
To families, yes.
To families per month. They are right now supplying 1,000 to 1,200 meals a week. So you see the increased need there just in that agency alone.
Right.
You know.
So if you look there or if someone asked you from an organization that, why they weren't able to participate, the organization had to be a 501c3 on paper.
Or C19.
Or C19, which is a veterans organization. So, in other words, you may know an organization that is a nonprofit or calls itself a nonprofit, but if it doesn't have the paperwork under the federal regulations, we could not give it money. And part of what the staff did was making sure that we had all the paperwork showing a 501c3 status or a 501c19. So just so that's out there for the public to understand.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
Would you entertain a question from the board?
We can, yes, go ahead.
Just,
Jack, do you want to come up
to
with
the-
Yeah, because of the live stream. And if you could pull your mask down so we could, thank you.
The Jack McKernan, Williamsport. I know how important West Branch Drug and Alcohol is, but I thought most of their funding was state funding anyhow. And is this 20,000 supplementing what they don't get from private industry, or So I was kind of curious about how they would get on there when most of their money was either federal or state. I thought.
Shannon, you want to answer that?
Yes, I'll answer that.
She was nodding her head, so I'll let her answer.
What we have to do, all of this money is from the COVID CARES Act funding, which is federal. It is being administered through the state, so all of this money is going to be audited. So what we have to do is go through each individual application and verify that they have documentation and aren't double dipping funds. So they're allowed to apply to us for rent relief if they're not renting from a a government entity, for payroll, if they didn't get payroll subsidies from somebody else, for utilities, for PPE, for anything they had to purchase because of COVID. So that's why it's taking so long between the small businesses, between the nonprofits, because we know we're gonna be audited. That's why we have to verify that we have all that documentation before we then, as we did on Tuesday, come to the commissioners with a list of checks to be released to those entities. Because it's something we have to document, then we have the purchasing department document that, and then the commissioners approve it, and also the controller's office have to document. We all have to have that documentation and make sure that it's in line so that when the auditors come through, they don't ask for the money back.
And I think maybe I think I understand what the commissioner is asking is that there are expenses that organizations incurred related to COVID-19 that they may not have funding for. For example, PPE, or some of the organizations get some money from the state, but they can't pay for other things with state money, and they may have fundraisers and so forth to try to help effectuate their mission, whether it's, I mean, I'm thinking, for example, if you have someone who's on a drug rehab situation and they're not Medicaid eligible, but they may still be receiving services and so forth. So there's costs that they incurred, and what Shannon is saying is they would have had to be able to document that those costs were not covered by other state or federal funds, right, Shannon?
Right, and one of the things that we were initially thought we were going to be able to do was do lost revenue. So where many of these people get revenue from is fundraisers. We couldn't do that for lost revenue, but we could do it for expenses. And so we just have to make sure that, so they could submit to us for PPL, for gas bills, for things like that, for Comcast, for payroll. So that's the difference here. We couldn't do it for lost revenue, but that that revenue was always used to pay for those items that they didn't get reimbursed for otherwise.
Also, the whole cost of going virtual.
Laptops, Zoom, and all that kind of stuff.
Zoom,
We're doing a lot of Zoom meetings.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, even this afternoon, we were supposed to go to a museum. We were supposed to go to a meeting about the broadband down in Union County, but was being Zoomed by CEDACOG. So all of these organizations had expenses.
That's funny, you're being Zoomed.
One of the, and I said this the other day, but I think it's worth repeating, is that one of the counties literally kept, they got about the same amount as we did, $11 million. They literally kept.
Well, they got 12 and they kept 11.
They got 12 million from the state and they kept 11. The county kept 11. They didn't plow it out. We've plowed out
To everybody.
to everybody. We've plowed out to the business. You know, we've had to do it, try to do it on an equitable basis. We can't just give it all to the schools or all to the nonprofits, all the businesses. We've tried to spread it around so that there's an effort.
If you look at our allocation, we're opposite of what the other county did.
Yeah, we're the opposite. We kept about $1 million, and we kept about $1 million and gave out about 9.2 million. So, or we'll.
Well, and when we finish.
But the state allowed the counties to keep it.
Okay, thank you.
Are you going to vote on that?
Yes. I have a motion to accept action item 3.1.
I'll move to accept.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so carried.
And Shannon has 3.2, vote on right-of-way use and maintenance agreement.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioners, as you know, we've been trying to promote the Timber Run Industrial Park. We have a possible purchaser for lot number 2. However, they needed 20 acres and the original subdivision plan for lot 1 and 2 only had about 18.9 acres. So we're having, we have requested Brady Township do a special meeting next Wednesday night for the subdivision plan for lot 2 and also for the KOEZ subdivision that the state is requiring so we can re-up our KOEZ designation for that Timber Run Industrial Park. So what you have, with the revision to lot 2, we had to revise the right-of-way use for the turning lane that will be off of 15 into the park. and then also the maintenance agreement for that. So that is what you have before you today.
Okay, as we've been stating in previous commissioners' meetings, we're very close to a sales agreement with one of those businesses. This would bring quality, outstanding jobs to Lycoming County. We're very excited about that. We look forward to moving closer each day to that sales agreement. And then still on the radar with the other business. We're in the finals of hoping that they locate here too with part of their outstanding company. So today we'll vote on the right-of-way use and maintenance agreement. And any other questions or discussions, Commissioner?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I have a motion to accept.
I'll move to accept.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
3.3, Beth Johnson, regarding the 2021 budget.
Morning, Beth.
Morning, Commissioners. You presented to the public October 22nd for them to have public comment. We provided copies of the budget in several county departments for the public to come in and review. I just wanted to let everyone know that final approval is December 3rd, and any changes as of October 22nd versus December 3rd will be announced in detail. And we need to open up the floor, I guess, to
Okay.
any public comment.
Any public comment this time?
Stay close. Jack McKernan. Let's see, the changes, I assume that the piece that was put out on October 22nd, this document for the public hasn't been updated yet.
No.
Okay. And the changes, any of the changes that are made to it between now and then will be done at what meeting?
December 3rd.
Okay. Not to belabor this, and I know this is the budget, but I didn't know if Beth, if you could just give the public a short idea on how did 2019 end up versus budget? How is 2020 looking compared to what was budgeted? I have to think that, you know, this would be my perception that 2020, that maybe the expenses are quite a bit lower, and that maybe we haven't spent money on projects that you know, should help the cash flow out. And with all kinds of federal money coming in, it might make 2020 really look better than maybe it is. But if you could address those two things first.
Our 2019 actual versus budget, we ended up with expenditures of $97.5 million versus $103 million in our budget. So we were only at 94% of the budget. We ended up with, instead of a $6.8 million deficit that was budgeted for 2019, we ended up with only a $1 million deficit. So that does help the cash flow. And so far for 2020, we're at 66% of our expenses. And just as Mr. McKernan was speaking on, we budgeted $111.4 million. We're only at 72.8. So yes, that's definitely going to help cash flow. Our 2020 budget is a $14 million deficit budget, but we currently have a $4 million surplus. So he is correct. It is, our expenses are not what we're budgeted for. I'm going to say probably due to COVID, but I'd have to really dig in to find out the exact reasons.
I think it's a combination of a lot of different things,
Yes.
but COVID being number one.
Yep.
Beth, is it possible to just talk about the fund balance from you know, 19, 20, and 21?
I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, okay.
Another follow-up would be how, and I will have to admit, I haven't been reading the paper as much as maybe I have in past years, but how was the OpenGov system, you know, did the implementation of that go through, and is it working how I think it was intended to work, to help on budgeting and help department heads and to work on their budget?
The OpenGov system it was something that commissioners initiated for transparency. And it works very well for being online, pulling up any kind of reports you want to see. We can put on there stories about why this happened or why that didn't happen. As far as the budget entry itself, we were the only county that they've ever done that for. We were the first one. So it was a little challenging at times. I believe the commissioners want to give it another year to see how it goes, if it's going to fit or not. So we'll be using it again next year. And we'll see if they're able to meet the standards that we already have. But we can still, right now, we can still download our budget to OpenGov and still provide all those reports and stories to the public that are on our website they can review anytime. It's not on there yet until final approval.
So as with anything new, it takes a little time to work out the
Yes.
quirks. I'd say the jury's still out.
Yes.
We have to see how it progresses in the next year.
Yeah.
But overall, it was satisfactory.
Right. And to address the fund balance issue, we always we do a cash flow fund balance during the budget process to know if we're heading in the right direction. So we usually take the prior years, it's usually a projection, and then we turn it to actual once we know the final numbers. So it has been improved, and I know that we met plenty of times to discuss the fund balance to make sure that you were heading in the right direction. So we still have a good, healthy fund balance even after this budget's approved.
So right now, with this budget being approved, it'd be about, what, 14?
Yes.
14 million.
Yep.
Yep. And
Which
you want
is
to explain
well-
the standards with
Yes.
the bills, 2 months bills?
Yes. We're actually lower or higher than that.
And what is that, an estimated 2 months bills of the county?
12 million.
12 million, so we're above that. Okay.
And that's a best practice of GFOA.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
On the budget, or on the piece that was handed out on the 22nd of October, and it might be just terminology, but on page 6, it mentions recreational grant department and employee fringe and liability insurance department. Did they have 2 new departments, or is that just the terminology for the report?
There's no new department, so that must be terminology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On page 7, under the 2021 budget, funding source is hotel tax. It has 1.425 million, the same as 2020 budget. I have to imagine that the hotels got absolutely hammered, and I'm just kind of curious if that will, I know to the county it doesn't mean anything because it's kind of a net wash, but I'm just out of curiosity, maybe for the public, how has the hotel tax revenue been this year compared to the proposed budget for 2020?
Well, it has been hit very hard, there's no doubt about it with COVID, but there has been, surprisingly, it's been coming back. There's been things that have happened over the past year. I can think of the Elm Park being open for the softball. During the summer months, you could go by Elm Park, the place was packed. That brought a lot of people in on the weekends from out of the area that rented hotels. So that was a big plus. But the hotels obviously have been devastated. Won't be nearly what it's been in the past, but it won't be as horrible as we think it's going to be.
So I suspect it's the same because it's a budgeted amount, Beth, right?
Yes.
It's a budgeted amount. That's why it's the same for each year. It's not the actual. It's what was budgeted.
Yeah, my assumption is that.
It's gonna be lower.
You're just gonna assume that it's gotta be
Yeah.
lower.
It's gonna be lower,
I
yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's a good point. The question is, I said before the meeting that many businesses are staying virtual until April. The state has announced they're staying till April. I was talking to some of the large entities like Baker Tilly and others. And I wonder if we need to adjust that on what the budget should be for the document.
We can adjust that, but
Yeah.
as he said in the beginning, it
We don't know what it's gonna be.
Yeah.
make that much of a
Yeah.
difference, but we definitely
Yeah.
can look at that.
It's gonna be a guess.
Okay, I guess, on the budget, in the commissioner's office, the increase, any insight as to the $142,000 increase? And also just kind of curious on the contingency, do you foresee that the contingency will stay close to that, or do you think you'll have to increase it, or?
Well, the reason for the increase in the commissioners is because of the EIP Phase 2 will be going to that, so we put the money there to pay for that.
There's also, what else did we put? We put something in there that previously was in another department, I think. Didn't
Commissioner, would DCED reimburse that money?
They would pay 50%
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
50%.
We could have
So the
that.
last study cost 80,000 and we paid 40.
Yeah.
Or did it cost 160 and we paid 80?
Yeah.
Cost 160.
160.
Yeah, it cost 160 and we paid 80.
Yeah.
But didn't we just put something into, I'm trying to remember what we put into, under the commissioners. Beth, do you remember what it was?
And it's been since public display.
Oh,
This will
okay.
be- This will be one of the adjustments that we're gonna talk about on the 3rd.
Okay.
But it was $1 million for a program a recreational program, economic development.
Oh, right, okay.
That
So
we needed
that's,
to have ground ready before we could even apply for a grant.
right. So, yeah, we should tell the public what we're gonna change it to, so they're not waiting till the 3rd
Yeah.
to hear. It's not like a top secret, but, so that would be changed. But I think what you're asking is, why was the increase of 142,000?
Yeah.
So part of that is the EIP Phase 2.
Yeah.
And for the public, the EIP is what we engaged in several years ago, and the state picks up, if they approve what you're doing, will pick up half the cost. For example, if we needed new software in the controller's office, or we needed new software in the prothonotary, and we could get it established that it was necessary, they would pick up half the cost. And other counties around the state have been using it as a way to get state money. It's really moved from a Act 47, keep people out of receivership, to a way to get money out of the state.
It's the name change of the program to the
Strategic,
action, I think, management plan.
yeah, that's a good point, Strategic Action Management Plan.
They'll probably change the name by again next year.
Early intervention.
Yeah.
Any insight on the increase in the constables area?
We spoke to Sheriff about that. The courtrooms, things are getting more, as we know with society, things are getting more volatile. And the courtrooms now, with the judges, they've requested deputies to be in the courtrooms, and at least two of the courtrooms all the time. So as the sheriffs are manning the courtrooms and taking care of those responsibilities, the papers have to be served, and the constables' fees need to be upward to offset those costs, due to the environment these days with the disturbances in the courtrooms, disturbances at the magistrates, things like that. So, and the court's requesting the sheriffs to be there for pretty much all the hearings.
Just a comment, district attorney's office, I would say, it's nice to see that he's really kept his budget almost at no increase in it, and that it is going down. Appreciate that. Ken George has always done a tremendous job in the buildings area. Just looking at the expenses for next year, I would kind of think that, you know, Third Street Plaza and Lysock, either, you know, with those drastic drops in expenses, or is there something that,
Third Street Plaza is getting new air conditioning, new heating, which is a $3.5 million project. The Lysock View, that building is in bad shape. There's going to be a lot of money that needs to be budgeted towards that in the future if we decide to keep it.
There's a whole electric upgrade.
The whole electrical
and-
upgrade
but
out there.
I'm looking just at the maintenance area, and both of them had significant decreases, which is nice to see. But-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that part, but we have major projects coming into those buildings too. Yeah, Beth?
Yeah, I want to comment on that. The 3.5 million that commissioners are talking about is in capital. These expenses on the departments or the buildings themselves is stuff like painting, paving, which is probably going to get done this year, so they didn't need to have it back in next year.
Yep.
Human services under human resources, a nice decrease there. Man, the department seems to be thin as it is. How do they do such a decrease?
So you should recognize that when Ann Garrett left, they didn't backfill her position. In other words, Roxanne, who was the deputy, took over as the director. Lauren, who was working there, took over as deputy. They never filled Lauren's position, so they're working. It's good that you notice it. It saved the county a lot of money. They're working with 20% less staff.
And I guess maybe, okay, so and I think this was a change that might have been made last year, but the wage numbers now reflect fringe, health, and all that kind of stuff piled in.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's on a, they've been trying to refine it so that it's more and more accurate in terms of what it really costs in a particular department to have a person there.
So, okay, so in that line of questioning, the fringe and insurance is basically a 2% increase. What's in that number now, the employment fringe?
It's the same line items that we used to have in one department only, and then we would allocate them through the cost allocation plan to each department. We're now directly charging those with a journal entry every month. It's the same line item, it's the same healthcare, dentistry, all workers' comp, all of that. It's just not in one department anymore. But this number encompasses countywide.
It just seems like it would be higher than that.
So Beth, just to clarify for me, that line employment fringe you're saying is the workers' comp, the Social Security, it's called fringe, but they're really requirements that payroll taxes is what they typically would be referred to in a private sector budget. By the way, you should know that we budgeted in the healthcare to 1.9, no, is it 109%? No. In other words,
109%.
109%, where we normally would budget about 10%. We tweaked it a tiny bit and we budgeted to 109%.
Yeah.
But we're still, this is our self-funded plan.
Brought it down 1.4 million.
Yeah.
Back to maintenance for a second. On the, in that area, I didn't see anything notated for a building for DJ Solomon. I didn't know, is there still something in the works there or not?
Oh, yeah, we purchased a building on Lycoming Creek Road, the old Napa store. It's in the capital section of the budget, and it's, we had previously put money, into the bond. We took out a bond for DJ Solomon, and they are working on it. Ken and the crew are working on it. We have some folks from PRC out there gutting it and so forth. And our goal, the lease with the Hutchinson Company runs out June 30th, I think, July 1st.
Yeah.
And our goal, I mean, it's not just a goal, it's a absolute will be done by June 30th, so that we can work with the state to move the computers, and that, they do it once. Their state's gonna pay to do it once. So the goal would be to have him in there by July.
Should there be any kind of maintenance for that site included, or?
Probably something, I mean, it's gonna be brand new, so something probably marginal, but I don't think it's, we don't expect that there'll be much. That's the nice thing about doing a new building.
And I think I saw this in the paper, but did you guys add the reentry coordinator, or
It's
was
a
it
grant.
position?
It's a grant position that was subcontracted.
Okay.
So we were denied the grant because of the time lapse from when the previous person had left to now. There's no data, so we were denied the grant. They said reapply it for next year. But it is it's not a full-time position, a county position. It's we put out for RFP, and Geo was awarded the grant, awarded the position, I'm sorry, not grant.
So, and just for the public also, it gets confusing. There's day reporting, which is a program that's been run for 4 years, and then there's reentry. So day reporting are people who are actually out in the community. Instead of being in prison, they go through a program at Geo where they basically develop a different way of looking at the world that's not criminally oriented. Reentry are people who are literally in prison. They're getting released, and the goal is to make sure, if, for example, if they're on medications, that they have enough prescriptions to carry them through until they're out. Do they have a license? Do they have a place to stay, et cetera, so that we're not just dumping people on the street who are not prepared to re-enter after they've been in the prison. I mean, I know you knew that, but I'm not sure for the public, because sometimes we use the term re-entry at the GEO program too, and it gets kind of confusing. That's really a day reporting program. The re-entry that we did on a contract basis is the re-entry that we had spoken about during the last term also.
How's the leachate tank? I've seen the classified ads, the legal ads that need to run. It looks like there's been a bunch of amendments to the RFP, and I mean, are you doing a new liner, I guess?
Well, it's still litigation, and things are progressing in the right direction. That's all we'll say on it right now, because it's in litigation.
Okay.
Well, we did run some legal ads about.
Yeah.
We did run legal ads with accepting bids for repairing it. Because any way you slice it, we've got to get it repaired. The question of who's liable for what happened up to this point is what's under litigation. But yeah, we are.
Do you anticipate the tank being completed next year, that it might then cut down on the amount of hauling that you need to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I know one thing, I swear I haven't seen this in the paper, but I thought at the beginning of the year that and I know COVID messes up a lot of things, but the levee repairs, and in particular the cross pipes, I thought that would have been completed this year. Was there, nothing was ever awarded there?
We did get some grants, and unfortunately we didn't get one of them from the EDA. I think it was the EDA. No, which one was it? was it the EDA or was it
The one we didn't get, but we.
No, it was the H2O.
H2O.
We didn't get the H2O grant from the state. We're still I mean, we have a plan, we're working it, we had a meeting 2 weeks ago with all the municipal partners. You know, for the public, the challenge we face is, as a community, we have to have a conversation about how we're going to fund the ongoing maintenance and operation of this. We still have not really worked that out. In other words, we're getting grants to do the major repairs to the levee, but what all of the funding people are saying, sort of offline, is, and those who are helping us get the money, is we need the community to come up with an ongoing plan of how we're going to fund it.
The only thing I would say, though, is I thought that and I guess, you know, this is, I'm not trying not to get off the budget, but I think it is part of the budget because, you know, I thought all the funding was in place to do the cross pipes. And I guess my point is, if that wasn't done, that money's still in the budget, and that'll make, I mean, that cash should be sitting there and be available for the project whenever it takes place, but it seemed it was a very important thing to get done, and one of the things I thought of is, you know, I doubt it had much effect, but, you know, with Shopback, we know that they were somebody who their insurance company had been on their tail about getting the levee situation taken care of, and you know, it just seemed like the cross pipes were an easy thing to check off the list and get them done. Just
so you know, and unfortunately I don't have it at the tip of my brain, but there is a schedule set that I see in my mind on the paper. There's a schedule set of when we're going to break ground, which is early next year. I believe that Beth, in the capital budget, is there?
We have it underneath the special revenue department for, it's actually 100% funded. It's either funded by federal funds, state funds, and our match is coming out of Act 13.
Right. So it's pretty much the same scenario that when you were here, we've set aside Act 13 funds, and then we have it in a special revenue part of the budget, which is why you're not seeing it in the general fund.
It's under our economic development division on page 5.
Page 5?
Page 5 of our, yeah.
Okay.
the detailed-
I mean, I'm glad you raised it, because it's very important for the public to understand that this levy is still an important thing that we have to deal with.
The pension obligation payment for 2020, and then for 2021, did the obligation for 21 increase, and what do you think of what was supposed to be paid in 2020? Will you be making the full payment, or you know, 80% of it?
And I'm going to ask the controller, who's in the back of the room, if she happens to know off the top of the head. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you remember off the top of your head how much of the 2020 we paid? Was it 80%?
You did 1 million.
We did 1 million, but the ADEC, which is the term for the amount that the actuaries say we should pay in, was 1.9. So we opted this year not to, well, actually, the year isn't over.
We have a meeting.
We have a meeting. We actually have a pension meeting after this meeting. And one of the topics we need to discuss is whether or not we're going to move forward with the ADEC.
Did the obligation amount for next year stay the same, go up?
What is it for next year?
I guess.
Yeah.
I can't tell by looking at it. But is it flat?
The calculation as of September 11th was 1.7 million.
That's what I thought, yeah, okay, 1.7.
However, that's going to change.
Okay, so that might be subject to change, and it looks like it might be going up.
Yes.
Okay, so with the pension, as people come in and go out and so forth, and as things happen, so to answer your question, it's probably going to be north of 1.7 million, and so far this year we've put in $1 million out of the 1.9. These are good questions, by the way.
Did the county issue any new bonds this year, and do they have any intention at this point to issue any new debt next year?
We refinanced the bond, let Beth
Go ahead,
answer.
Beth.
Yes.
Nothing new.
No, nothing new. It was a refunding. It paid off 2 of our 2010 Build America bond and Recovery Zone Economic Development bond. And as far as I know, we don't have any intention to.
So Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, we refinanced the debt at the golf course, right?
Yes.
And we paid off and got a better rate and saved, did you say how much we saved? Was it
We saved $102,000 due to the bond refinancing at a lower rate.
As far
Yeah.
as payments, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
I am just about done. How has the healthcare loss experience been this year compared, last year I think was absolutely terrible.
We had a better year this year. We have worked closely with our broker, very closely, and we feel that the rates this year we were given were fair. We have put that out for an RFP, and right now we have a committee established that meets with the 8 brokers that have put in a request for 2022. We'll be moving forward 2021 with our current broker, and in 2022 we'll either go with our current broker or one of the 7 new brokers. The committee will make recommendations sometime in January. We'll make that decision early February, whether we go with a new broker or stay with the current one.
What has been done or what is being done with employee wellness in order to help drive down the long-term cost of health care?
Well, they did a deep dive into the data, discovered some things that could assist the county employees. We'll be upping our wellness program. We're going to go to a new wellness program that will be even more beneficial to the employees and the public and the taxpayer dollar overall. And we'll be introducing that here in the beginning of the year. Hopefully roll it out probably late March, early April.
So one of the big finds was that diabetes is a serious issue among our employees, which is not unusual in terms of the general population, but something which can be very, very costly. So one of the things that the wellness program did that, if you recall, a year ago or so, you just had to get a checkup. Now there were 4 or 5 different things. You had a dental checkup. You had if you were a woman, you had a gynecological exam, and if you were a man, or a woman, you had I believe a prostate check. There was a menu of like 3 or 4 things that they needed to do. Well, actually, they needed to do within the last year to get credit next year. It's always a backward-looking thing. So they did these things in 2020 to get credit on their 2021 premiums they pay. And actually, we've had really good participation among employees in the wellness program. I think higher than we first thought.
And you might have said this earlier, but the projected employee copay on the health insurance, what's the change on that going to be?
On the employee, we kept it the same. They're paying 12%.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there is
there is an increase.
Yeah.
There's an overall increase that they're paying, but it's 12%. Still 12%.
Okay.
But still paying a slight increase.
12. Okay, then the set premium, did that, since it's self-insured, you kind of have control over that. So
Right.
is the premium moving up?
Well, that's what I said. We budgeted at 109%. You know how we usually budget at 110? We budgeted at 109. So it's slightly down in terms of what like over $1 million.
So it saves a 1.4 million on those costs.
So the employee costs should see a drop, although they're sharing 12%. It sounds like they're going to see.
No, they're paying slightly more, but their payment is 12% of their check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because we're self-funded, you know this, we have to look at good year versus bad year. Some years we maybe do very well and not have a lot of claims, and other years, like one of the years you were here, we blew out the amount. So it's always, it's different than having a sort of like a term insurance policy where you pay a fixed amount and regardless of what happens. But it's helped us control the healthcare costs.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, thank you.
I want to take, and I know we've been talking, but I think it's worthwhile to take a minute to do a little education here with the public, and actually your questions, Mr. McKernan, are prescient also. So when I came into office, I went to the HR and asked them about the hiring, because there's always this structural deficit. The state has a structural deficit, we have a structural deficit. What that means is that expenses increase at a faster rate than revenues. It's the rate of increase. I mean, unless you raise taxes every year, that rate of increase is what causes the structural deficit. So, and when I in my last term, and actually I should say, one of my goals has been before I leave here to try to help get the structural deficit under control. So we talked about this the last time. There were 552 full-time positions. Commissioner McKernan, you remember that we passed a resolution to work to decrease it. We set goals, we set targets to decrease it. I did some crunching of numbers when I was looking at the budget this morning, and by reducing, we now are at 530 full-time positions. So we're down 22 full-time positions. But the result of doing that has saved in personnel costs $3,660,000. That's when you take, like the first year in 2016, we went from 552 to 547. 2017, we actually went up one. 2018, we went down 8 to 540. 2019, we went down, and so forth. The reason I'm raising it is because I think that as we go forward, we have to be aware of this structural deficit, or else we will continue to get into a tax cycle, increasing taxes at a high rate. I just did some, so think about this, Ms. Johnston. You told us that our general fund budget is at 14 million. If we had not reduced those positions, our general fund budget would be less than 11 million. It would be at 10.5, because we would not have saved 3,660,000. If it was at 10.5, we would be on pressure to raise taxes, because we would not have 2 months worth of expenses on file. I did some quick calculations. If we had not, and I say this because we need to try to continue to do this, and I know when employees hear it, they think, oh, he just wants to try to cut staff. It's not that. It's that if we want to keep good jobs with a good pension, a defined benefit pension, good health care, raises, people are getting a 2.5% raise, assuming that they
1.5.
Well, they're getting a cost of living of 1. And then if they do a good job, they're getting 1.5 on top of it. So they're getting 2.5. So my point is that, and I'm not against that, because, working people have to be able to pay and feel like they're moving ahead, and certainly not like anyone's getting rich. But this is my point. If we hadn't reduced the positions in the years, in the first term from 2016 to 2019, we would have spent $5,280,000 more, and that would have been repeated in this term. So between those two terms, we would have spent $10,560,000. I say that only because as we go forward in this year in 2021, I think that we need to be as vigilant as we have been in terms of looking at every staff position and asking all elected officials and row officers to recognize that our ability to keep these jobs as really good jobs is contingent on us being able to get the structural deficit under control. And as Commissioner Masser said when I first came here, he said the fiscal department, now it's budget and finance, the fiscal department is our 220 circuit breaker, meaning they tell us when we are going into a dangerous territory. So I just wanted to point that out. I think it's important for the public. And this is my last comment. the public also has to recognize that if we try to become more slim, we may not be able to do everything immediately like you might have been used to in the past. Maybe you have to wait a day to get something. Maybe you call ahead and say, can I get this or that? But it will help us keep taxes under control, which is something which helps us all. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment at this time? Okay, hearing none, we are adjourned till Tuesday, November the 15th. 17th, I'm sorry. Beyond a couple days, 17th. Yep, thank you.
Thanks to the public for coming today, too.
Okay, I gotta have this, you know. You talking. I understand.
Zoom.
I hear you.
Thank you, Eileen.
Have a good one.
Well, not a good time.
No, I know.
Take care, Chris.
Eileen, can you take this upstairs, Steve? Counselor. Take care. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I have to attend a funeral.
Oh, it's so great.
Sorry.